Good morning, YouTube, and today I'll be profiling for you my rock deck, or as more commonly called, most people call it as Rock Stun with Kwakimirus. Let's hop right into it. Sorry for their monsters, we run one Gaia Plate, the Earth Giant. He is your beat stick of the deck, your biggest beat stick of the deck, rather. To special summon him, you banish 2 rocks from your graveyard, and each of your standby phases you have to banish another one, or else he's destroyed. But each time he battles in a monster, you have the attack of the monster that you're battling. So it's pretty darn great, and it's really difficult to get over him. Fantastic, in my opinion. I run a Block Dragon because this really helps protect your deck in a deck where you have to tribute off monsters a lot, and you can special summon from hand or graveyard, which is fantastic. A lot of utility with this guy. One Castle Gate. Now, for those of you who don't know what this does, this is a lot more gimmicky, and I've had this in this deck forever. You tribute a level 4 or lower monster, and you inflict that damage to your opponent's life points. And most of your all your Kwakimirus are 1900 attack, so most of the time you're going to be doing that amount of damage. Plus, he cannot be destroyed by battle. So if you have a defense position, he's just a gigantic wall. If you have an attack position, you can use that awesome effect, and he's still not destroyed. Makes your opponent bait out a lot more things. So it's pretty great in my opinion. Next, moving on to the Kwakimiru portion, I run triple of the Overload, negates inherent summons, triple of the Guardian, who negates monster effects, triple of the Wall, who negates spells, and only 2 of the Sandman, who negates traps. Traps aren't as prevalent. Obviously, you could slide in the 3rd if you're more afraid of traps, but I really like him anyway. He's just another name in the deck, and it's great. Next, we run 2 Fossil Dyna Pachycephalo. Really, running 3 isn't that much of a necessity in my opinion, because you run Ties of the Brethren here and you can search them out pretty darn easily with that. You could try and convince yourself to run playset, but I like him at 2. Next, I run 2 Block Golems, because Block Golem himself lets you revive 2 level 4 or lower Earth Rock type monsters. 2 level 4 or lower rock type monsters from your graveyard, and lets you special summon them. That lets you get 2 negations off of the field if you have your Kwakimirus in the graveyard. It can also revive Fossil Dyna. Just a great all-around card, and lets you establish a board. Rounding up our monster, we run 2 Golem Sentry. Now this works great with Ties of the Brethren in that you can flip it face down, and then next turn you can flip it back face up, and use it as a compulsory evacuation device that your opponent has to get over in order to advance the game state. I kind of like him. He's not necessarily as viable today, but I like him as is anyway. Moving on to our spells, we run triple Ties of the Brethren. This is what really makes this deck go off. If you see this and just about any of your monsters, you can establish a prominent board. Like let's say you see a wall, you can use it. Bring out your Fossil Dyna, bring out your whatever negation you need, and it's pretty great. And it lets you establish boards that are pretty big without having to be as aggressive after that point. Next, we run triple Diamond Core Kwakimiru. This is fantastic. It lets you search any of your Kwakimirus, and if a monster, your Kwakimirus monster would be destroyed, you can banish that in card instead. It's pretty darn cool. I run 2 Catapult Zone. For those of you who don't know what this does, if any monster you control would be destroyed, you can set a rock-type monster from your deck to the graveyard instead. This is fantastic because it lets you set it up for your Block Dragon, your Block Golem, your Gaia Plate. It's fantastic, and it makes your opponent not able to just tack over all your negations. Pretty cool. Run a Dark Hole and Raigeki, obviously for board clearances. Next, I run Double Solidarity. This is fantastic in the fact that if you only have your rocks in your graveyard, each one of your Kwakimirus will be 2700 attack each. And that's fantastic, and especially in a deck that needs a little bit more oomph. Sometimes if your opponent has a gigantic monster you need to get over of, this is pretty great if you're trying to push for game. Run a Moon Mirror Shield, because there's some times where you'll just send the field with a Fossil Dyna, and he's a little bit fragile, so this is another great establishing thing to get over your opponent's bigger monsters. Moving on to our traps, we're in a pretty heavy one. Solemn Strike, a playset of it, because that's fantastic. Anti-Spell Fragrance, because I think Pendulums might have a little bit to say during this format, but additionally it lets you, if you go first and you set this, your opponent has to play around it, and hopefully you'll be able to establish a little bit more dominance by the time they do get to activate their spells. So I like to main Anti-Spell Fragrance. It's kind of weird. Next, I run double Story Mirror Force, because the biggest thing that this deck can lose to is after your just attacking over your monsters and then attacking for game. So this gives you something to negate the battle phase, or to establish a dominance in the battle phase as well. Rounding up our traps, we run a skill drain. Now this is fantastic in the fact that Kwaku-Mirus activate on the field, but they resolve in the graveyard. So you can still use their negations of their effects, according to, like, from what I've been told, you can still use their effects, and you get to negate all effects on the field. It's pretty darn cool. Moving on to our extra deck. We only run Xyz in this deck, and this could be obviously any rank 4s you want to, or you could establish some, like a Decode Talker or something else. I run a Gemnite Pearl and a Diamond King, Diamond Crab King. These are the only targets that will work if you want to keep Solidarity alive, so I still like to run these two, and they're pretty darn great in their own sense. One Anti-Luminescent Knight, because he's pretty cool. Steals from a Roach, Ragnar Zero, Gaga Cowboy, the entire Utopia Prime, Utopia Lightning, because you have plenty of room in this extra deck. Baguska, he's becoming pretty clutch. 101, because stealing your opponent's monsters is fun. Castell, Heartland Draco, because it works with your Solidarity and your Catapult Zone. Tornado Dragon for back row disruption, and Abyss Dweller to negate the one area that you don't really have too much control over, your opponent's graveyard. So that's pretty cool, in my opinion. That's going to wrap up my Rock, or Rock Stun, Kwaku-Miru Stun, whatever you want to call it, deck. And it's definitely a deck that you can play if you don't know what you're going up against. It's a safe bet. You have answers to just about everything in the deck. It may not be the most consistent or the most, you can't plus very often off of it, but I like it as it is because it's a decent, viable deck, and I've seen some decent success with it. Anyway, I love it. This is the 4th deck I ever built, and I've maintained it and upkeeped it ever since then. And I hope you can grab something from this. Hopefully you can utilize in future. Thank you very much, and have a great